Greetings, this is an analysis of my remote viewing session of the World War II mystery, the missing Flight 19. Flight 19 was a squadron of bombers which took off from Fort Lauderdale on the 5th of December in 1945 and then was subsequently lost whilst passing through the weird and strange Bermuda Triangle. In this video I use remote viewing to psychically probe and gather information about this target. Remote viewing is a psychic technique developed by the CIA in the 1970s which anybody can learn, and it allows you to psychically probe and gather information from a remote target without knowing what that target is. In this session I use only the bullseye method of remote viewing because I thought it would be interesting to focus and use only one technique to see how far I could take it. Okay, so for the bullseye method all I'm doing is closing my eyes, using breath work and the target number, and then allowing shapes and forms to form in my mind's eye and then writing them down. So if we read the tasking for this target, there are actually three elements to the target: the planes themselves, the crew, and then the event which led to their loss. Now don't forget that with the bullseye method your subconscious mind is trying to draw in pictographic form all of the elements of the target at the same time, which are in this case are the planes, the crew, and the crash event itself. So for the first part of my data I immediately draw something which, well, I didn't know what it was, but I guess it looks like a propeller from an aeroplane. And then on the right hand side I write long, hard, energetic, angled and edgy. I see something angled with a surface which reminds me of water, and I write water question mark. Now there is water at the target, and later on in the data we'll see that this water has something to do with the final location or resting place of this missing squadron. On the left hand side I draw a pyramid with a sort of a whirlwind type structure. This is my mind trying to form the pictograph of the three elements of the target. Then I saw a step pyramid which, as we will see later on in the data, contains three elements of the target. But it's very interesting that I drew a step pyramid because this type of structure is from the lost civilizations of Central America and South America, which is very near to where the Flight 19 was lost, inside the Bermuda Triangle. Moving on, I draw something which looks like more technology from the aeroplane, maybe the outer surface with rivets. Then I write slush because I heard that type of sound, like something going into the water. I write structure, which is probably the aeroplane, and then water question mark. And actually those are the three elements of the target. Slush meaning the crash, structure meaning the plane itself, and water meaning the final location of where the lost Flight 19 currently is. And then on the left hand side what you see there is a bird's eye view of the step pyramid which I drew above. It does actually contain three elements. The first element would be the step pyramid itself, all of those squares, and then there's something on the top, and then finally there is something flowing out from the top. That would be the third element. Then I saw this thing and it just looked to me like water. I didn't really know what it was, so I wrote water question mark. Now on page 3 here I saw this shape. Now keep in mind I don't know what the target is and I didn't know how many elements the target could be broken up into, but here in this shape I broke this up into two elements, and the reason that I did that is because these two parts of this shape felt different. In my mind's eye I'm touching these shapes and I'm probing them to try to find out what they are, what they feel like, what their purpose is. So for part A I felt that it was angled, metallic, sleek and flat. Now that sounds like an aeroplane. I also wrote that it was light and airy, and then I wrote shapy, and I didn't know what that meant, so I said that its defining feature is its shape. Its defining feature is its shape. I think that describes any jet or aeroplane or anything. And then I wrote angled. So clearly part A was focused onto the actual aeroplane itself. And then underneath I found I labeled part B, and I thought that that had a feeling of coming straight down, and obviously that has to do with the crash. So then I saw in my mind this pyramid type shape with these two ethereal see-through type pyramids above it and something black streaming down one side of it. And it was clear to me at this point that these were three different elements of the target. So I labeled them as such, and then I carry on in the session trying to focus on each one of these elements of the target individually. So focusing on part A, I'm trying to work out what it is, and inside my mind's eye I'm grabbing it and touching it and turning it inside out and trying to find out what it is. I write that it's a very light material. I write glass, maybe immaterial, and it was sort of energetic and light. And then I've written that it feels glassy, it's like thin, sort of delicate. And I've written that it's an AOL of an umbrella because I had this idea of rain and a water sound. But I guess what I was focusing on here is actually the glass cockpit, which you can see in the picture of the aeroplane. Then moving on, still on part A, I see this weird structure and it had something on top which was made of a thin material and there was something inside it. But underneath there were these different layers, and I just wrote that they had a concept of layers. For colours I wrote yellow. For sound I heard the sound of rain, and to touch it, it felt light and delicate, and there was a smell of moisture in the air. And I questioned, what is the purpose of this? And the answer was protection. And then I said, protection from what? And the answer was rain. So I thought to myself, oh, that's a bit boring. It just sounds like an umbrella. But I guess it was actually the cockpit of the airplane which I was seeing at that point. Moving on to part B, which is the downward streaming black thing which I saw. I'm trying to focus on in it, and I saw these circular type things with streaming dark colours coming down, and I was looking up at it trying to work out what it was. I got the idea that it was energetic and flowing and that it had great force, and I guessed that this was the crash itself or the planes going down. I write force and water question mark, and then I've written flow of essence, innards coming out, and then below down I've written flow and life question mark. Then I write flow, energy, force, power, flowing, moving forward, streaking, fast, force, fast, can't be stopped, unstoppable, concussive, blast, and then tame, and then truncated. Truncated means ended, cut off, or finished. So it sounds like the crash. Then I moved on to my part C, which I guess, after having got the feedback, is unfortunately the final resting place of the lost Squadron 19. I did my bullseye method. I used my breath and I read out the target number with including the part C, and then bam, I had an out-of-body experience. I was underwater. And I was there and I was thinking, wow, this is incredible. I'm underwater. And as soon as I got the realization that I was underwater, I thought to myself, oh my God, I'm going to drown. And for a very, very split second, there was a moment of panic. But then a voice or thought came to me, and it was like, no, don't be stupid. You're okay. You're not really here. This is just a projection or something like that. You're not going to drown. So then I relaxed and I thought, okay, I'm here. And then I was basically standing there underneath the water with my hands on my hips thinking, what is this place? There's nothing here. I'm under the water. What am I doing here? And then I was aware, or made aware, that there were these things circling around me, and they were sort of dark black shadows moving around me. And I thought to myself, what are these things? Sharks? Question mark. Which is sort of stupid. And then I thought to myself, no, they're not sharks. And then I suddenly got the idea that I shouldn't really be here, and I felt uneasy, so I left. And then I came back and began to write everything down. And then, unfortunately, after getting the feedback and seeing what the target was, I'm guessing that these black shadows that I saw could have been what is left of the missing crew of these fighter pilots in these planes which went down. Now, I'm not a believer in ghosts. I've never had any type of experience with ghosts at all in my entire life. And really, these black swirling shadow things which I saw, I don't really know what they are. But that's all I can tell you. And then I wrote down deep, heavy, dark, claustrophobic, and submerged question mark. And then I wrote wow, because it was amazing to me at this time after having had this experience. And then I draw these pictures here, and I didn't know what they were at the time, but I guess I had the idea that there was something there crashing and splashing and going into the water. I wrote fluid, I wrote submerged like. And then for the final blast of the bullseye method, I saw this thing at the bottom, and it was something submerged underneath the water. I had this idea of a submarine, and that inside this thing which was submerged, there was something inside it, and I tried to draw that. And there was this black line going up from it, and it passed through the surface, and the idea I had that this was some type of submarine. But I just finished the session at that point because it was already 12:30. So after getting the feedback and I found out, and trying to correlate it with my data, I found out that basically I was looking at the crash and the final resting place, the final moments of these poor guys that lost their lives. And it sort of made me a little bit sad, really. But that's part of remote viewing. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and you found it interesting. Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you again sometime in the multiverse.